What started as a routine promotional appearance turned into one of the most explosive confrontations in late-night television history. Tom Cruise's heated exchange with Jimmy Kimmel led to chaos in the studio and sent shockwaves through Hollywood. The atmosphere in the Jimmy Kimmel Live studio felt electric as the show's theme music faded and the cameras rolled. Tom Cruise, Hollywood's eternal action hero, sat comfortably in the guest chair, his trademark smile beaming under the studio lights. He was there to promote his latest mission, impossible installment, but what unfolded would overshadow any movie. Discussion. Jimmy Kimmel leaned back in his host chair, that familiar smirk playing across his face as he shuffled through his note cards. The audience was buzzing with excitement, phones already recording despite the no-filming policy. They had no idea they were about to witness television history. "So, Tom," Kimmel began, his voice carrying that practiced late-night cadence, "I have to ask about something that's been making headlines. You've been pretty vocal about certain medical opinions over the years. Given everything we've been through globally with health crises, do you still stand by some of those controversial statements you've made?" The question hung in the air, like a loaded weapon. Cruz's smile flickered for just a moment, but he maintained his composure. "Jimmy, I think people should have the right to make informed decisions about their own health and their family's health. That's always been my position." Kimmel's eyes lit up with the predatory gleam of a host who smelled blood in the water. "But informed by who, Tom? Because when you've criticized psychiatry and psychiatric medications on shows like this, aren't you potentially putting vulnerable people at risk? I mean, you're not a doctor, right?" The audience shifted uncomfortably. This wasn't the usual softball promotional interview they expected. Cruz's jaw tightened imperceptibly, but his media training kicked in. "I've studied these subjects extensively, Jimmy. I believe in looking at all the facts, not just accepting what we're told without question. People deserve to know there are alternatives." "Alternatives to proven medical treatments?" Kimmel pressed, leaning forward now. "Tom, my cousin struggled with severe depression. Medication saved his life. When someone with your platform tells people not to trust their doctors, real people get hurt." The studio had gone eerily quiet. Even the cameramen seemed to sense the tension building. Cruz's publicist, seated in the front row, was frantically texting, her face pale with panic. "I've never told anyone not to consult with medical professionals," Cruz replied, his voice gaining an edge. "But I think people should ask questions, do their research, and not just blindly follow whatever prescription they're handed." Kimmel wasn't backing down. "Research where, Tom? On the internet? From your friends in Scientology? Because that's what this is really about, isn't it? Your church has some pretty strong opinions about psychiatry." The mention of Scientology sent a visible shock through Cruz. His smile vanished completely, replaced by a hard stare that could have cut glass. "Jimmy, that's crossing a line. You invited me here to talk about my film, not to attack my personal beliefs." "I'm not attacking anything," Kimmel shot back, his voice rising slightly. "I'm asking legitimate questions that millions of viewers want answered. You've used your celebrity status to promote views that medical professionals say are dangerous. Don't you think you have some responsibility here?" The audience was dead silent now, sensing the conversation had veered into dangerous territory. Cruz's hands gripped the arms of his chair, his knuckles white with tension. "You know what, Jimmy?" Cruz's voice was low and controlled, but there was steel in it. "I've been doing this for over 40 years. I've been on hundreds of shows, worked with thousands of people, and I've always been respectful. But what you're doing right now, this ambush, this isn't journalism. This is a hit job." Kimmel's smirk widened. "A hit job? Tom, I'm literally just asking you to explain your own words. Words you've said publicly, on television, multiple times. If you can't defend your own statements, maybe you shouldn't make them." The tension in the room was palpable now. Security guards had quietly moved closer to the stage, sensing something was about to break. Cruz leaned forward, his eyes never leaving Kimmel's face. You want to know what I think, Jimmy? I think you brought me here under false pretenses. You told my people this was about the movie, about celebrating cinema. Instead, you're using me to boost your ratings with some manufactured controversy. That's not just unprofessional, it's dishonest. Kimmel laughed, but there was no humor in it. Oh, so now I'm the bad guy for asking questions? Tom, you literally jumped on Oprah's couch declaring your love. You've had public meltdowns about psychiatry. You've made headlines for decades with your behavior. But I'm supposed to pretend none of that happened? My behavior? Cruz's voice cracked like a whip. What behavior? Working harder than anyone else in this industry? Doing my own stunts? Being passionate about my craft? Or is it my personal beliefs that bother you so much? The host leaned back, clearly enjoying the rising tension. It's the hypocrisy, Tom. You present yourself as this all-American hero, but behind the scenes, you're part of an organization that— Stop. Cruz's voice cut through the studio like a blade. Stop right there. The studio atmosphere had transformed from electric to combustible. Cruz stood up from his chair, his movement so sudden that several audience members gasped audibly. The action star's famous composure was cracking, revealing something raw and dangerous underneath. You don't get to sit there and make insinuations about my faith, my beliefs, or my life, Cruz continued, his voice rising with each word. Not when you've built your entire career on cheap shots and schoolyard bullying disguised as comedy. Kimmel's eyes widened slightly, but he wasn't backing down. If anything, Cruz's reaction seemed to energize him. Schoolyard bullying? Tom, I'm asking questions that actual journalists should have asked years ago. The American people deserve to know who their heroes really are. Heroes? Cruz laughed bitterly. You think this is about heroism? This is about ratings, Jimmy. This is about you desperately trying to stay relevant in a world that's moving past your brand of mean-spirited entertainment. The audience was completely silent now, hundreds of people holding their collective breath. This had gone far beyond uncomfortable television. It had become something primal and ugly. Kimmel stood up as well, matching Cruz's aggressive posture. You know what's mean-spirited, Tom? Using your platform to spread misinformation about mental health. My show reaches millions of people every night. When I have someone on who's potentially harmful, I'm going to call it out. Harmful? Cruz's voice was incredulous. I've spent my entire career inspiring people, pushing boundaries, showing them what's possible when you refuse to accept limitations. What have you done except tear people down from behind a desk? I've entertained people without joining a cult, Kimmel shot back, the words hitting the studio like a physical blow. The reaction was instantaneous. Cruz's face went white with rage, his hands clenching into fists at his sides. Members of his entourage were on their feet, rushing toward the stage. The show's producers were frantically signaling to cut to commercial, but Kimmel waved them off. A cult? Cruz's voice was barely controlled fury. You just crossed a line that you can't uncross, Jimmy. That's not just disrespectful to me, it's disrespectful to millions of people around the world. Kimmel sensed he had struck gold and pressed his advantage. I'm just saying what everyone else is thinking, Tom. The weird behavior, the strange relationships, the control over your personal life. When does religious freedom become something darker? You have no idea what you're talking about, Cruz spat. You sit in your little bubble, making jokes about things you don't understand, people you've never met, experiences you've never had. You're a coward hiding behind a laugh track. The insult hung in the air like smoke. Kimmel's face darkened, his carefully maintained television persona finally cracking. A coward? At least I don't jump around on couches like a maniac or attack Brooke Shields for seeking help with postpartum depression. That reference to his infamous criticism of the actress years earlier hit Cruz like a physical blow. His publicist was now frantically trying to get his attention, making cutting motions across her throat. but he was beyond listening. "I apologized for that comment years ago," Cruz said through gritted teeth. "But you? You've never apologized. For anything. Every cruel joke, every personal attack, every time you've humiliated someone for your own entertainment. You're a professional bully who's never been held accountable." Kimmel laughed, but it sounded forced now. "I'm a bully? Tom, you're the one standing over me, red-faced and screaming. Maybe this is why your relationships don't work out." The personal attack on his marriages was the final straw. Cruz took a step closer to Kimmel's desk, his movements predatory and fluid. Security guards moved in from the wings, but nobody was quite sure what to do. This was uncharted territory for late-night television. "My relationships?" Cruz's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper that somehow carried through the studio's sound system. "You want to talk about relationships, Jimmy? Let's talk about how you've made a career out of destroying other people's relationships. Their reputations, their dignity. All for what? A few cheap laughs?" The host's confident demeanor was finally showing cracks. "Tom, maybe you should sit down, take a breath." "Don't you dare condescend to me," Cruz snapped. "You invited me here. You ambushed me. You attacked my faith, my character, my personal life. And now you want me to sit down and take it quietly? That's not happening." The studio had become a powder keg. Audience members were pulling out their phones despite security warnings, knowing they were witnessing something that would be talked about for years. The usual controlled chaos of live television had given way to something raw and unpredictable. Kimmel's smug expression faltered as he realized he might have pushed too far. But his ego wouldn't let him back down now. "Tom, this is my show. In my house. If you can't handle a few tough questions, maybe you shouldn't be doing interviews." "Your house?" Cruz's laugh was sharp and humorless. "Jimmy, this isn't your house. This is a television studio owned by a network that pays you to entertain people, not to destroy them. And right now, you're failing at both." The host's face flushed red. "Destroy you? Tom, all I've done is ask you to explain your own actions. The fact that you're having a meltdown over basic questions says more about you than it does about me." "A meltdown?" Cruz's voice rose to a roar that seemed to shake the studio walls. "This isn't a meltdown, Jimmy. This is someone finally telling you the truth about what you really are. You're a parasite. You feed off other people's talent, their fame, their vulnerabilities, because you have nothing of your own to offer." The insult landed like a physical blow. Kimmel's carefully constructed facade crumbled completely, revealing the insecure performer underneath. "At least I don't believe in aliens and worship some science fiction writer," the studio erupted. Several audience members stood up, some shouting in support of Cruz, others defending Kimmel. The show's band leader was frantically trying to get the attention of the producers, unsure whether to start playing music to cover the chaos. Cruz stood, perfectly still for a moment, his fury so intense it seemed to radiate from him like heat. When he spoke again, his voice was deadly quiet but somehow reached every corner of the studio. "There it is," he said slowly. "The real Jimmy Kimmel. Not the charming late-night host, not the harmless comedian. The bitter, small-minded bigot, who thinks he's better than everyone else because he can make people laugh at their expense." Kimmel's hands were shaking now, whether from anger or fear was impossible to tell. "I'm not the one who's lost touch with reality, Tom. I'm not the one who thinks they can defy gravity and jump off buildings for a living. At least I do something real," Cruz shot back. "At least I put my body on the line, push myself to the limit, create something that matters. You sit behind that desk every night and contribute nothing except negativity and cynicism to the world." The security guards were closing in now, clearly preparing to intervene, but neither man seemed to notice or care. They were locked in a battle of wills that had transcended television entertainment. Kimmel made one final desperate attempt to regain control. "You know what, Tom? Maybe we should take a commercial break. Cool down a little bit." "No," Cruz said firmly. "No commercial break. No cooling down. You wanted this, Jimmy. You orchestrated this whole thing for your ratings, for your viral moment. Well, congratulations. You got it." The actor turned to face the main camera directly, his piercing blue eyes boring into the lens. "I want everyone watching at home to see what just happened here tonight. I came on this show in good faith to talk about my work, to entertain people, to share something positive. Instead, I was subjected to a coordinated attack on my personal beliefs, my character, and my integrity." Kimmel tried to interrupt. "Tom, that's not—" "I'm not finished." Cruz cut him off without even looking at him. "This man invited me here under false pretenses. He lied to my representatives about the nature of this interview. He used his platform to spread religious intolerance and personal attacks. This isn't entertainment. This isn't journalism. This is harassment." The studio was completely silent now except for the hum of the cameras and the soft click of audience members' phones, recording every word. Even Kimmel seemed stunned by the directness of Cruz's accusation. "For 40 years, I've been coming on shows like this to connect with fans, to share my passion for filmmaking, to give something back to the people who've supported my career," Cruz continued, his voice gaining strength with each word. "I've always been respectful, professional, and grateful for the opportunity. But what happened here tonight crossed every line of decency and professionalism." Cruz stood perfectly still for a moment, his fury so intense it seemed to radiate from him like heat. When he spoke again, his voice was deadly quiet but somehow reached every corner of the studio. "You want to know what the real tragedy is here, Jimmy?" Cruz's words cut through the silence like a scalpel. "It's that you had the opportunity to do something meaningful tonight. You could have had a genuine conversation about filmmaking, about pushing boundaries, about what it takes to entertain millions of people. Instead, you chose to tear someone down for sport." Kimmel's mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air. The confident late-night host who had started this confrontation was nowhere to be found. In his place sat a man who suddenly realized he had bitten off far more than he could chew. "I want everyone watching to understand something," Cruz continued, turning back to the camera. "This isn't about me defending myself. This is about something much bigger. It's about the culture of cruelty that's infected entertainment. It's about hosts who think they can say anything, attack anyone, destroy people's reputations, all in the name of comedy." The studio was so quiet that the sound of the cameras seemed deafening. Even the usually restless audience sat in stunned silence, recognizing they were witnessing something that would be remembered long after the show ended. "For decades, I've watched as talk shows became less about celebrating talent and more about tearing people down," Cruz said, his voice gaining power with each word. "Hosts hide behind their desks, behind their writers, behind their laugh tracks, and they think that gives them the right to humiliate anyone who sits in that guest chair." Kimmel finally found his voice, though it came out weak and defensive. "Tom, look, maybe we got off on the wrong foot here." "No," Cruz cut him off sharply. "We didn't get off on the wrong foot. You planned this. You and your producers sat in a room and decided to ambush me for ratings. You thought you could catch me off guard, make me look bad, and boost your numbers. Well, congratulations, Jimmy. You got your viral moment, but at what cost?" The actor walked closer to Kimmel's desk, his movements controlled but predatory. "You've just shown millions of people who you really are. Not the charming comedian they see every night, but someone who's willing to attack a guest's personal beliefs, their family, their integrity, just to get a reaction." Kimmel's face had gone pale. "Tom, I think you're taking this too seriously. It's just television." "Just television?" Cruz's voice exploded with indignation. "Jimmy, this isn't just television. This goes out to millions of homes. People watch this with their families. Children see this. And what you've taught them tonight is that it's okay to bully people as long as you can make others laugh." The weight of Cruz's words seemed to settle on the studio like a heavy blanket. Several audience members were nodding in agreement, their earlier excitement replaced by uncomfortable recognition of the truth in what he was saying. "I've been in this business for over 4 decades," Cruz continued, his voice now carrying the authority of his experience. "I've worked with hundreds of hosts, thousands of journalists, countless producers and directors. And I can tell you that what happened here tonight isn't normal, it isn't professional, and it sure as hell isn't entertainment." Kimmel made one last desperate attempt to salvage the situation. "Look, Tom, why don't we just start over? We can edit this out, do a proper interview." Cruz laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Edit it out? Jimmy, this is live television. Every word, every insult, every attack you made is already out there. You can't take it back. You can't edit out the damage you've done." The actor straightened his jacket and looked directly into the main camera one final time. "To everyone watching, at home, I want you to remember what you saw here tonight. Remember how quickly respect and professionalism can disappear when someone decides that entertainment is more important than basic human decency." He turned back to Kimmel, who was now slumped in his chair, the fight completely gone out of him. "And Jimmy, I want you to remember this moment the next time you think about using your platform to tear someone down. Because what goes around comes around. And tonight, it just came around for you." Without another word, Cruz ripped off his wireless microphone and threw it onto Kimmel's desk with a sharp crack that echoed through the studio. The sound seemed to break the spell that had held everyone frozen in place. "I'm done here," Cruz announced, his voice carrying to every corner of the studio. He looked out at the audience, many of whom were now applauding, and gave them a small nod of acknowledgement. Then, with the same commanding presence that had made him one of Hollywood's biggest stars, Tom Cruise walked off the stage. His entourage quickly fell in behind him, leaving a wake of chaos and stunned silence. Kimmel sat alone at his desk, his face a mask of shock and humiliation. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every moment of his defeat. The studio audience was buzzing with excitement and disbelief, many still recording on their phones despite security efforts to stop them. Within minutes, clips of the confrontation were spreading across social media like wildfire. By morning, every news outlet in the country was covering the story. The phrases "Kimmel destroyed" and "Cruz takedown" were trending worldwide. The fallout was swift and merciless. Kimmel's ratings plummeted as viewers turned away in droves, disgusted by his behavior. Advertisers began pulling their support, unwilling to be associated with what many saw as a professional ambush. Industry insiders who had always found Kimmel's mean-spirited humor distasteful finally had the ammunition they needed to speak out. Tom Cruise, meanwhile, was universally praised for his dignified response to an unprofessional attack. His passionate defense of respect and decency in entertainment resonated with millions of viewers who were tired of the culture of cruelty that had infected late-night television. The confrontation became a watershed moment, sparking a broader conversation about the responsibility that comes with a platform. It reminded everyone in the entertainment industry that behind the glitz and glamour are real people who deserve to be treated with dignity and respect. And in the end, that night proved that sometimes standing up for what's right is more important than playing it safe for the cameras.